The crimson suns of Vexithara cast long shadows across the obsidian spires of the Kethmori stronghold, as Captain Jake Morrison stepped from his battered transport vessel. The twin stars painted the alien architecture in shades of blood and fire, a fitting backdrop for what many considered a suicide mission. Jake's weathered hands adjusted the translator device at his throat, knowing that words would likely prove useless here. The Kethmori had rejected every diplomatic overture from the Terran colonies for the past 3 years. But his people were dying, their Ark ship's life support systems failing without the rare zenithium crystals that lay beneath this world's surface. "You are either very brave or very foolish, human," came a voice like molten steel. Jake turned to see her emerging from the shadows. Kira Venthax, the undefeated champion of the Kethmori warrior clans. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her muscular frame sheathed in form-fitting armor that accentuated rather than concealed her feminine curves. Her skin held a deep bronze hue with darker markings that spiraled along her arms and disappeared beneath her armor. 2 piercing amber eyes studied him with the intensity of a predator. "I prefer determined," Jake replied, fighting to keep his voice steady. Despite her intimidating presence, he couldn't deny her striking beauty. Alien, yes, but undeniably magnificent. Kiravan circled him slowly, her movements fluid and predatory. "Your kind has sent many negotiators. They all left empty-handed if they left at all. I'm not here to negotiate." This gave her pause. Her hand, adorned with ceremonial scars that marked her rank, rested on the plasma blade at her hip. "Then, why do you stand before me, tiny human?" Jake had studied their culture obsessively during the long journey here. The Kethmori respected only strength, and their ancient laws were absolute. One law in particular had caught his attention, a law that hadn't been invoked by an outsider in over 1,000 years. "I invoke the right of combat," he declared, his words echoing off the ancient stone walls. The reaction was immediate. Kiravan's eyes widened in shock while the gathered Kethmori warriors began murmuring in their harsh native tongue. Some laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Others simply stared in disbelief. "You cannot be serious," Kiravan said, though her tone had shifted from casual disdain to something approaching respect. "The right of combat is sacred. It binds the defeated to serve the victor in all things, as warrior, as advisor, as—" She paused, her golden eyes meeting his. "As mate." "I understand the terms," Jake replied, though his heart hammered against his ribs. "Will you accept?" Kiravan studied him for long moments. At 42, Jake was battle-scarred and gray at the temples, but his blue eyes held an unwavering determination that seemed to intrigue her. He stood barely 6 feet tall, compact compared to her towering frame, yet something in his posture suggested coiled strength. "No outsider has ever defeated a Kethmori champion," she said slowly. "Many have tried. Their bones decorate our trophy halls. Then I'll be the first exception, or I'll die trying." The crowd had grown larger now, words spreading through the stronghold like wildfire. Elder warriors pressed forward, their scarred faces etched with curiosity and bloodlust. This was entertainment they hadn't expected. Kiravan's lips curved in what might have been a smile, revealing sharp canine teeth. "Very well, Captain Morrison. I accept your challenge." She turned to address the crowd in their native tongue, her voice carrying the authority of her rank. An ancient Kethmori elder stepped forward, his body covered in ritual scars. "The right of combat has been invoked and accepted," he proclaimed in heavily accented standard. "At dawn, when the twin suns reach their zenith, you will face Kira Venthax in the circle of honor. The victor claims all, the defeated serves, without question until death." As the crowd began to disperse, chattering excitedly about the upcoming spectacle, Kiravan approached Jake one final time. "You should know," she said quietly. "I have never been defeated, not once in 300 battles." Jake met her gaze steadily. "There's a first time for everything." She laughed, a surprisingly melodic sound. "Brave words, human. I will honor you with a swift death." "We'll see about that," Jake replied, watching her walk away with fluid, predatory grace. Tomorrow would determine the fate of both their peoples. The twin suns blazed overhead as thousands of Kethmori filled the ancient amphitheater carved into living rock. The Circle of Honor stretched 50 meters across, its obsidian floor polished smooth by centuries of combat. Jake stood at one edge, wearing minimal armor that felt inadequate against his towering opponent. Kiravan entered from the opposite side, her ceremonial battle armor gleaming like liquid metal. She carried a plasma blade that hummed with lethal energy, while Jake held only a simple metal sword, the traditional weapon for challengers. The crowd roared approval for their champion. "Last chance to withdraw, human," Kiravan called across the circle, her voice carrying easily in the arena's acoustics. Jake rolled his shoulders, feeling every scar from his military days. "I didn't come this far to quit now." The elder raised his staff. "Let combat begin." Kiravan moved like lightning, closing the distance with impossible speed. Her blade whistled through the air where Jake's head had been a split second before. He rolled aside, using momentum to sweep at her legs, a move she easily avoided. "Too slow," she taunted, spinning to deliver a devastating kick. But Jake wasn't there. He'd learned long ago that fighting bigger, stronger opponents required different tactics. While she was supremely skilled, her combat style was formal, traditional. Jake fought dirty. He feinted left, then dove right, scooping up a handful of sand to fling at her eyes. Kiravan snarled, momentarily blinded, giving Jake the opening to strike at her weapon arm. His blade connected, drawing first blood. The crowd fell silent. No one had wounded their champion in decades. Kiravan wiped blood from her arm, her golden eyes now blazing with fury and something else. Respect. "Clever. But tricks won't save you." She attacked with renewed ferocity, her blade weaving patterns of death. Jake gave ground steadily, parrying desperately, letting her expend energy while conserving his own. This was a marathon, not a sprint. Minutes stretched into an hour. Kiravan's breathing grew labored. She'd expected a quick victory, not this grinding battle of endurance. Jake had taken several wounds but remained mobile, adapting to her fighting style with each exchange. "You fight like a coward," she gasped during a brief separation. "I fight to win," Jake replied, circling slowly. "Your people respect strength, right? Then respect this. I'm still standing." Her next attack was slightly slower, her form less perfect. Jake saw his chance. Instead of retreating, he stepped inside her guard, accepting a glancing blow to his ribs in exchange for a clear shot at her weapon hand. His pommel strike numbed her fingers, sending the plasma blade skittering across the stone. They grappled, now her superior strength against his superior leverage. Jake used every dirty trick from his military training: pressure points, joint locks, psychological warfare. He whispered in her ear as they struggled, his breath hot against her skin. "You're magnificent, but you're fighting yesterday's war." Something in his tone, intimate and admiring rather than mocking, broke her concentration for a crucial moment. Jake swept her feet and drove her to the ground, his blade at her throat before she could recover. The arena fell dead silent. "Yield," Jake commanded quietly, "or I finish this." Kiravan stared up at him, chest heaving, golden eyes wide with shock and something that might have been arousal. No male had ever dominated her, never pinned her helpless. The sensation was disturbing and thrilling simultaneously. "I yield," she whispered. The explosion of noise from the crowd was deafening. Shock, outrage, amazement. Jake helped her to her feet, their hands lingering together longer than necessary. The elder approached, his ancient face unreadable. "By the laws of our ancestors, Kiravan Thax is bound to serve Captain Morrison in all things. The ceremony will be held at sunset." As they left the arena, Kiravan walked beside Jake, her defeated posture gradually shifting to something more calculating. "You fought with honor, human," she said quietly. "Perhaps there is more to your species than I believed." Jake glanced at her, noting how the afternoon light played across her bronze skin. "Call me Jake, and you might be surprised what humans are capable of." Their eyes met, and for the first time, Kiravan felt a flutter of anticipation rather than dread about the binding ceremony to come. The binding ceremony was a blur of ancient rituals and flickering torchlight. Kiravan knelt before Jake as ceremonial chains were placed around her wrists. Symbolic, rather than functional, but their meaning was absolute. She belonged to him, now by law and tradition. Later, in the quarters assigned to them, an uncomfortable silence stretched between them. The rooms were spacious by human standards but felt confining to Kiravan, who was accustomed to the vast halls of the warrior. "Complex, this is awkward," Jake admitted, removing his ceremonial robes to reveal the extent of his injuries from their battle. Dark bruises covered his ribs and several cuts needed attention. Kiravan moved without thinking, her warrior instincts overriding her resentment. "You're wounded. Sit." "I can manage." "Sit," she commanded, then caught herself. Her cheeks darkened, with embarrassment. May I tend your injuries? It's what I would do for any warrior." Jake studied her face, seeing past the proud mask to genuine concern beneath. "Thank you, that would help." Her hands were surprisingly gentle as she cleaned and bandaged his wounds, her touch clinical yet somehow intimate. This close, Jake could smell her skin, something like warm spices and clean metal. "Why did you really come here?" she asked quietly, focusing on a particularly deep cut. The truth. Jake was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, "My people are dying. Our generation ship is failing, and we need Zenithium to repair the life support systems. There are 12,000 souls aboard that ship, including children, who've never seen a real sky." Kiravan's hand stilled. "Children? Hundreds of them, some born in the void between stars, never knowing what it means to feel solid ground beneath their feet or breathe air that doesn't taste recycled." She resumed her ministrations, but her touch had grown even gentler. "The council spoke only of human greed for our resources. Maybe some of my people are greedy, but desperation looks a lot like greed from the outside." Jake winced as she applied antiseptic. "What about you? Why are you bound by this tradition?" "It has always been our way," she said automatically, then paused. "My grandmother was the last to face the rite of combat. She won, of course, but she told me stories of what it meant, to bind yourself completely to another's will. I never understood why she seemed almost disappointed by her victory. And now," Kiravan met his eyes, "now I begin to understand. There is freedom in surrender, when it is to one who proves himself worthy." The conversation was interrupted by alarms blaring throughout the stronghold. Both warriors were on their feet instantly, Jake reaching for his weapon despite his injuries. "What is it?" he demanded. Kiravan was already moving toward the door, her combat instincts overriding everything else. "Zephkul raiders. They must have learned of my defeat and think us weak." They ran through corridors filled with rushing warriors. In the command center, tactical displays showed enemy ships descending through the atmosphere. "Kiravan!" barked Commander Thekvar, her cousin and second in command. "We need you in the defense grid." "What can I do?" Jake asked. "Several Kethmori." Warriors laughed harshly. "Stay out of the way, human," one snarled, but Kiravan turned to study Jake with calculating eyes. "You're a strategist, aren't you? I saw it in how you fought, always thinking 3 moves ahead." "Former military," he confirmed. "Tactical operations." She made a decision that shocked everyone present. "Then you stand with me. Show us what human strategy can accomplish." The battle raged through the night. Jake's unconventional tactics, using the Kethmori's own aggressive nature against the invaders, turned what should have been a rout into a tactical victory. But the cost was high, and Jake took a plasma bolt to the shoulder while shielding a wounded Kethmori warrior. Later, as Kiravan tended his fresh wounds in the aftermath, something had changed between them. "You could have let Veltar die," she said softly. "He called you coward earlier." "Brave people can still be wrong," Jake replied, then caught her hand as she reached for more bandages. "Kiravan, I need you to know, I don't think of you as my property. The ceremony, the chains, I know what they mean to your people, but where I come from, partnerships work differently." She stared down at their joined hands, his pale against her bronze skin. "How do they work?" as equals, as partners who choose each other. Choose, she repeated thoughtfully. Not conquer, not submit. Choose. Yes. For the first time since her defeat, Kiravan smiled. Not the predatory expression of a warrior, but something softer and infinitely more dangerous to Jake's peace of mind. Then perhaps, she said, leaning closer until her breath warmed his ear, it is time I made a choice of my own. When her lips met his, the kiss was fierce and tender simultaneously, a warrior's passion tempered by dawning affection. Jake responded, without hesitation, his hands tangling in her dark hair as she pressed against him. They broke apart, breathing heavily, golden eyes meeting blue in the flickering candlelight. This changes everything, she whispered. I hope so, Jake replied, pulling her close again. 3 weeks had passed since the first Zefkul attack, and the relationship between Jake and Kiravan had evolved into something neither had expected. Their days were spent in strategy sessions and combat training, their nights in passionate exploration of their growing connection. Jake had proven his worth repeatedly, his human tactics saving countless Kethmori lives. But not everyone appreciated the changes his presence had brought. She dishonors us all, growled Brakthul, a senior warrior, to his followers in the armory. Binding herself to an alien, taking his counsel over ours, the ancestors weep. Unknown. To them, Kiravan approached silently, her warrior training making her steps soundless on stone. The ancestors, she said coldly, stepping into view, valued strength above all else. Jake has proven his strength repeatedly. Brakthul's scarred face twisted with contempt. Physical strength, perhaps. But he weakens you, Kiravan. Makes you soft. Soon you'll be more human than Kethmori. Is that why you've been sending information to the Zefkul? She asked quietly. The armory fell dead silent. Brakthul's hand dropped to his weapon. You accuse me of treason? I accuse you of nothing. I know you're a traitor. The question is whether you'll face justice with honor or die like a coward. The fight was brief and brutal. Brakthul was skilled, but Kiravan fought with the fury of betrayed trust. When it ended, he lay dead at her feet, and the remaining conspirators knelt in submission. But the damage was done. The Zefkul fleet emerged from hyperspace in overwhelming numbers, their timing too perfect to be coincidental. In the command center, Jake studied the tactical displays with growing dread. It's a full invasion force. They're not raiding. They're here to conquer. Can we hold them? Kiravan asked. Jake was quiet for long moments, running calculations. Not conventionally. They outnumber us 4-1 and their ships are newer. Then we die with honor. Or, Jake said slowly, we try something insane. He outlined his plan rapidly, a coordinated ground and space assault that violated every principle of Kethmori warfare. It required perfect timing, absolute trust, and more luck than any sane person would rely on. It's madness, Commander Thekvar declared. It's our only chance, Jake replied, but it requires me to lead the space assault personally. Kiravan's golden eyes flashed with alarm. Absolutely not. You're not trained for void combat. I'm the only one who understands the plan well enough to adapt if things go wrong. And they will go wrong. That night, as Jake prepared for what might be his final mission, Kiravan came to him. She was magnificent in her ceremonial armor, every inch the warrior goddess he'd fallen for. If you die tomorrow, she said without preamble, I will follow you into the void. Kiravan, let me finish. She moved closer, her hands framing his face. I was raised to serve the strongest, to bind myself to power, but you've shown me something else. What it means to choose your battles, to fight for something greater than glory. Jake pulled her against him, feeling the warmth of her skin through the armor. I'm coming back, I promise. Don't promise what? You cannot guarantee, she whispered, then kissed him with desperate intensity. They made love that night with the passion of warriors facing battle, tender and fierce simultaneously. Every touch carried the weight of unspoken words, every caress a promise that transcended their different species. The assault began at dawn. Jake's plan unfolded with mechanical precision until the moment everything went wrong. Zeph-Cool reinforcements arrived early, trapping his small fleet in a deadly crossfire. His ship's communications crackled with Kiravan's voice. "Jake, your position is compromised. Pull back." "Negative. If I retreat now, the ground assault fails. Then I'm coming to you. Stay with your people. They need you more than I do." The comm channel went dead just as enemy fighters swarmed his position. Jake's ship shuddered under plasma fire, systems failing one by one. Through the viewport, he could see Kiravan's forces engaged in desperate ground combat far below. Then his ship was spinning, atmosphere venting through hull breaches, and Jake's world went dark. He awoke in a Zeph-Cool detention cell, his body aching from the crash. Through the energy bars, he could see other prisoners, mostly human crew members from his ill-fated assault. "The female warrior seeks you," his Zeph-Cool guard informed him with malicious glee. "She trades herself for your freedom. Foolish creature, to value alien life over her own." Jake's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "Even now she comes, alone, carrying the traditional surrender tokens. She will kneel before our commander and beg for your worthless life." Rage filled Jake like molten fire. Kiravan, proud, magnificent Kiravan, was sacrificing herself for him. The very thought was unbearable. "She won't kneel to anyone," he said quietly. The guard laughed. "All warriors kneel eventually, human. Your female will learn." But as Jake stared through the energy field at the alien stars beyond, he realized something the Zeph-Cool hadn't considered. Kiravan might come bearing surrender tokens, but she would never truly surrender. And neither would he. The rescue came at midnight ship time, swift and silent as death itself. One moment Jake was alone in his cell. The next, Kiravan materialized from the shadows like an avenging goddess, her stealth suit rippling with adaptive camouflage. "Did you really think I'd kneel to these scavengers?" she whispered, cutting through his restraints with a molecular blade. The guard said. The guard saw what I wanted him to see. Her smile was predatory. "I brought surrender tokens, yes, the heads of their forward scouts." Jake couldn't help but grin as she pressed a weapon into his hands. "I should have known better than to underestimate you." "Yes, you should have. Now move. We have 30 seconds before they discover I'm not actually here to surrender." They fought their way through the ship's corridors with the fluid coordination of warriors who had trained together, loved together, and learned to think as one. Jake's human unpredictability complemented Kiravan's Kethmori ferocity perfectly. "The shuttle bay," Kiravan called over the sound of plasma fire. "Thekvar is waiting with our forces," but their escape route was blocked by a full squad of Zeph-Cool warriors. Jake evaluated their positions with tactical precision, while Kiravan counted enemies with a warrior's eye for combat. "Too many," she said. "We'll have to fight through. Or we could collapse this section," Jake suggested, indicating structural supports that looked suspiciously vulnerable. "That would depressurize half the ship." "Their ship, not ours." Kiravan's laugh was fierce with appreciation. "I love the way your mind works, human." The explosion that followed sent shockwaves through the enemy vessel just as their shuttle cleared the docking bay. Behind them, the Zeph-Cool ship listed helplessly, its crew too busy with damage control to pursue. "The fleet?" Jake asked, as they raced toward the planet. "Scattered but regrouping. Your insane plan actually worked. The Zeph-Cool command structure is in chaos." Kiravan's hands flew over the controls with practiced efficiency, but they're calling in more reinforcements. This ends today one way or another. The final battle raged across 3 fronts: space, air, and ground. Jake found himself in the impossible position of coordinating all 3, while Kiravan led ground forces in increasingly desperate combat. The tide turned when Jake made a realization that changed everything. The Zeph-Cool weren't just invading, they were strip mining. Their fleet was positioned to extract zenithium directly from orbit, the same mineral his people desperately needed. "New plan," he announced over the tactical network. "We don't destroy their mining equipment, we capture it." "Impossible," Tekvar protested. It's too heavily defended. Not if we use their own tactics against them, Jake replied. Kiravan, remember what you taught me about warrior psychology? That we respect only strength, she said, understanding immediately. You want to challenge their leader directly. Their entire culture is built around individual combat determining fleet command. If I defeat their war chief in single combat, their forces will withdraw. Jake. No. Kiravan's voice carried a note of panic. Zefkol war chiefs are genetic modifications, bred for combat. No unaugmented being has ever. Then I'll be the first exception, Jake said, echoing her own words from weeks ago. Again. The challenge was issued and accepted with formal ceremony. The Zefkol war chief, a massive creature with 4 arms and cybernetic enhancements, towered over Jake like a mountain of metal and muscle. But Jake had learned something valuable from his battles with Kiravan. Superior strength meant nothing without superior strategy. The fight was brutal and brief, ending when Jake used the war chief's own cybernetics against him, overloading the neural interfaces with a precisely placed electromagnetic pulse. As the Zefkul fleet withdrew in defeat, Jake stood bloodied but victorious beside Kiravan on the observation deck of the Kethmori flagship. So, she said quietly, you have won mining rights to our zenithium. Your people will live. Our people, Jake corrected. If you'll have us. Kiravan turned to face him fully, her golden eyes reflecting the light of distant stars. The old traditions bound me to serve the one who defeated me, but I choose to stand beside the one who sees me as an equal. Is that a yes? Instead of answering, she kissed him with a passion that spoke of new beginnings and eternal bonds. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. The Council will need to ratify a new alliance treaty, she said practically, and my people will need time to establish permanent colonies, Jake added. Years of negotiations ahead of us. Months of cultural integration, difficult decisions, and complicated politics. They looked at each other and began laughing simultaneously. We've fought off an invasion and changed 2 civilizations in a matter of weeks, Jake said. I think we can handle some paperwork. Together, Kiravan agreed, taking his hand in hers. In the distance, the twin suns of Vexthara painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson, illuminating the path toward a future neither species could have imagined alone. The warriors' bond that had begun with ritual combat had evolved into something far more powerful, a partnership built on respect, tempered by battle, and sealed with love. As the first human colonists prepared to join the Kethmori on the planets, Surface Jake and Kiravan stood together as symbols of what their united peoples might become. Stronger together than either could be apart, bound not by ancient law but by conscious choice. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges yet to come. But whatever the future held, they would face it as equals, as partners, and as proof that love could indeed conquer worlds.